The office gleamed with the sterile perfection of success. Glass walls, steel edges, and the quiet hum of machines working more efficiently than people ever could. Ethan Vale stood by the window, staring down at the city that pulsed beneath him. Billions of dollars flowed through his name every quarter. His company's reach spanned continents. And yet, he felt nothing. Just another morning filled with meetings, metrics, and muted praise. His assistant, Grace, entered without knocking, tablet in hand and expression cautiously neutral. "Sir, there's something you should see." Ethan didn't turn. "Unless it affects the board or the quarterly numbers, it can wait." "It's about the formula division," Grace said. That caught his attention. He turned, eyes narrowing slightly. "What about it?" She hesitated. "We've been getting hundreds of messages since the recall last week. One of them is different. It's gone viral." Viral. His tone sharpened. "Why?" Grace handed him the tablet. On the screen was an email. Plain, unpolished, heartfelt. It began with the words, "Mr. Vale, I don't expect you to read this. But I'm writing because my baby hasn't eaten in 12 hours. Ethan frowned, skimming the message. A single mother, somewhere in New Mexico. The formula shortage had reached her town, and shelves were empty. She'd tried everything, calling stores, hospitals, charities, but the answer was always the same. No stock, no help. The message wasn't angry. It was exhausted. It was the voice of someone on the edge of breaking. "I know you probably don't even see these emails," it continued, "but if there's any way your company could send even one shipment here, please. My daughter is just 3 months old. I don't have anyone else to ask." Ethan stopped reading. He hated things like this, emotional appeals, guilt woven into desperation. It wasn't that he didn't care. He simply didn't know how to. Business wasn't personal. Business was math. "Who leaked it?" he asked finally. "No one," Grace said softly. "She posted it herself. It's spreading fast. People are sharing it everywhere." The headline reads, "Mother begs billionaire to save her baby." Ethan exhaled sharply, running a hand through his neatly combed hair. "So it's a PR fire," he muttered. "Draft a statement. Emphasize our ongoing efforts to stabilize supply chains. Blame logistics, not leadership." Grace didn't move. "Sir, maybe you should read the rest." He gave her a look, but curiosity tugged at him. He scrolled down. The final lines were simple, almost whisper soft on the screen. "I'm not asking for pity. I just need to feed my child. Please don't let her go hungry because of a mistake." For a moment, the hum of the office seemed to fade. Ethan stared at the words, feeling an unfamiliar pressure in his chest. It wasn't guilt. He didn't believe in guilt. It was something quieter, older, like the memory of a sound he hadn't heard in years. He closed the tablet and handed it back. "Find her," he said finally. Grace blinked. "Find her, sir." "Yes. The woman. The baby. Whatever it takes." His voice was calm but firm. "If she's real, I want to see her." And for the first time in years, Ethan Vale's day didn't follow the schedule. The jet descended through layers of gray cloud, revealing a sprawl of low buildings and dusty roads below. Ethan Vale stared out the window, his reflection ghosting over the small town that looked more forgotten than alive. He wasn't sure what he expected. Maybe a sign of his company's impact, or at least some recognition, but what he saw instead was the kind of quiet poverty he'd only read about in reports. He'd told his PR team this trip was a personal investigation, though everyone knew it was damage control. Still, there was a part of him, small, buried, that wanted to see the woman behind that email. He didn't admit it to himself, but it was true. A black SUV waited on the tarmac. Grace had come along, clipboard in hand, already coordinating the logistics of the visit. Local volunteers arranged for a short meet and greet, she explained as they drove toward town. "They think you're here to talk about relief efforts." "I'm here because I asked to meet her," Ethan said. His tone carried no warmth, just command. They stopped in front of a small community center, paint peeling, kids playing barefoot in the dust. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant. Volunteers looked up in disbelief as the billionaire from their TV screens stepped through the door in his tailored suit. Conversations stilled. Phones lifted discreetly. Lena Morales was easy to spot. She stood near a folding table covered in donated formula cans, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, eyes tired but alert. She wasn't dressed for a meeting with a man like Ethan Vale, just jeans and a faded sweatshirt, but she held herself with quiet strength. In her arms, baby Maya stirred, making soft, hungry noises. Ethan hesitated, which was new for him. He could negotiate billion-dollar contracts without blinking, but now, words felt clumsy. "Ms. Morales," he began. She turned, surprised, then wary. "You're him," she said simply. "I received your message." He gestured awkwardly toward the baby. "I wanted to make sure your daughter was safe." Her gaze didn't soften. "Safe? You mean fed?" The words hit harder than she knew. He nodded slightly. "Fed, yes. I've arranged emergency shipments to this area. You'll have what you need by tomorrow." "Tomorrow doesn't help her now," Lena said, bouncing Maya gently. "We've been rationing drops for 2 days." Grace stepped forward, offering a can from the supplies table. Lena hesitated, then accepted it, her hand brushing Ethan's. He felt the tremor in her fingers, fatigue, not fear. "You didn't have to come all the way here," she said quietly, mixing formula with practiced precision. "A statement online would have been enough for most men in your position." "Most men," Ethan repeated. "Maybe I didn't want to be most men." That made her look up. For a heartbeat, their eyes held, his searching, hers skeptical but curious. The baby began to feed, small sounds filling the silence. Ethan watched, something twisting in him again, that same pressure from before, deeper now. He looked around the center. The cracked walls, the volunteers doing their best with so little. His empire, vast and gleaming, suddenly felt hollow compared to this fragile moment. Lena finished feeding Maya and glanced at him. "You can't fix everything with money," she said, not unkindly. "But thank you for showing up." Ethan nodded once. "Maybe showing up is where I'll start." Outside, the storm clouds gathered, heavy and low, as if the world itself were holding its breath. The rain hadn't stopped for 2 days. Sheets of water blurred the town's narrow streets, turning the dust into thick rivers of mud. Ethan stood by the small window of Lena's kitchen, watching droplets race down the glass. His driver had given up trying to leave hours ago, the roads were flooded, the airport closed. He was trapped here, in a modest house that smelled of baby powder and cinnamon tea. Lena moved quietly behind him, rocking Maya in her arms. The baby's soft breathing filled the silence between them. Ethan felt strangely out of place, his tailored clothes and polished shoes too sharp against the gentle chaos of her home. A single lamp glowed in the corner, casting warm light on the chipped table, the stack of unpaid bills tucked under a candle holder, and a photo of a man in military uniform, her late husband, he guessed. "You don't have to just stand there," Lena said, breaking the quiet. "You can sit. The couch doesn't bite." Ethan turned, a faint smile flickering before he sat down. The couch sagged slightly under his weight. "You live alone." "Not really." She smiled down at Maya. "She's good company." He studied her as she moved through the kitchen. There was something grounding about the way she existed, efficient, uncomplaining, real. She brewed tea without asking, then handed him a chipped mug. He took it carefully, as if afraid to break it. "I'm sorry for what happened," he said finally. "The shortage, the recall, none of it should have reached families like yours." "It wasn't just me," she said. "There are thousands of us. You fixed it now, but for weeks people were scared. Parents driving 2 hours just for a can." She looked at him over her cup. "You probably didn't even know." "No," he admitted. "I didn't." Lena nodded, not surprised. "People like you live high enough that you don't have to look down." The words stung more than he expected. He opened his mouth to respond, then stopped. She wasn't being cruel, just honest. He realized he respected that. When Maya started fussing, Lena excused herself to settle the baby in a small crib in the corner. Ethan watched her gently tuck the blanket around the tiny form, humming a tune so soft it almost disappeared under the sound of rain. The image pulled something buried deep within him, an echo of a childhood lullaby he couldn't quite remember. "You loved your husband," Ethan said quietly, not sure why he spoke at all. She turned, surprised by the softness in his tone. "Yeah," she said after a moment. "I did. He was the kind of man who fixed things without being asked." Her eyes met his. "You remind me of him a little," except you needed someone to ask. Ethan looked away, a faint flush rising to his face. Maybe I did. The storm rumbled outside. For a long time, they sat in companionable silence, the distance between their worlds shrinking with every shared moment. When the lights flickered, Lena lit a candle. Its small flame danced, throwing golden reflections on her face. Ethan caught himself staring, realizing for the first time that the feeling pressing on his chest wasn't discomfort. It was recognition. Outside, thunder rolled again, but inside that tiny house, something fragile and new had begun to stir. 6 months later, the city skyline gleamed in the evening light, all glass and ambition. Ethan stood on the balcony of the Vale Foundation headquarters, watching the sun dip behind the horizon. Below, reporters gathered around a podium, cameras flashing, microphones poised. It should have felt like another business triumph, another headline proving his dominance. But this time, the success wasn't about profit. It was about purpose. He glanced at the banner stretched across the courtyard, the Maya Initiative, nourishing every child. The name still made his chest tighten in an unfamiliar way. He'd fought his board over it, they'd called it sentimental, unnecessary. But he hadn't cared. The world had enough faceless programs. This one had a story, her story. When he stepped up to speak, the crowd fell silent. He was still the man in the tailored suit, still composed, but there was something softer in his voice now. 6 months ago, I received a message from a mother asking for something no parent should have to beg for, he said. That message changed more than my company, it changed me. He paused, glancing toward the edge of the crowd where Lena stood, holding Maya. The little girl wore a pale yellow dress and a curious smile. She clapped her tiny hands, oblivious to the cameras. Lena looked radiant, though slightly uncomfortable in the public eye. Their gazes met, and she gave him a small, steady nod, the kind of encouragement that didn't need words. Ethan continued, the Maya Initiative is just the beginning. We're committing $200 million to ensure that no child in this country goes hungry because of supply failure or neglect. But beyond the money, we're committing to listening, to seeing the people behind the numbers. The applause rose slowly at first, then spread until the entire courtyard erupted. Ethan smiled, not the practiced one he used in boardrooms, but something genuine and unguarded. When it was over, he stepped off the stage and made his way through the crowd, his security detail keeping a respectful distance. Lena met him halfway. You did well, she said, her tone teasing. Almost sounded human up there. He chuckled, shaking his head. High praise, coming from you. They walked together toward the quieter edge of the courtyard. Maya reached for him, tiny fingers grasping at his tie. He hesitated only a second before taking her into his arms. She giggled, patting his face. The sound, light and unfiltered, filled something in him that had always been hollow. You've changed, Lena said softly. Maybe I finally started paying attention, he replied, his eyes on the child in his arms. They stood there as the city lights blinked to life around them, the world continuing on as if unaware that something extraordinary had just quietly begun. For Ethan, it wasn't about redemption anymore, it was about belonging. Later that night, as the three of them returned to Lena's small home, Maya fell asleep on his shoulder. Lena watched them, a faint smile playing on her lips. Ethan glanced at her and said, almost in a whisper, I never thought love would find me through an email. She reached over, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. Maybe it wasn't love finding you, she said gently. Maybe you just finally stopped running from it. He looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time, the man who had once owned the world realized he finally had something worth keeping.